Tonight, I'd like to continue to talk about enjoyment. It's one of my favorite topics. Um, Last week, I introduced the notion of rest and enjoyment both. Um, I'd like to expand a bit on that tonight um, because I think it's really helpful to your meditation practice. And having been around in kind of Buddhist practice for, I hate to say, 45 years now, there's a way sometimes it can become grim. It can become an obligation. It can become, you know, something good to do for yourself. All those sorts of frames of references get worked in there. And, every frame of reference perhaps has some validity, but the frame of reference for what we're doing as enjoyment, I think, offers a lot of advantages. Particularly in terms of lightening up what's going on. So it's not so effortful, not so grim. I want to just distinguish what I mean by joy from happiness. Our country is supposedly about the pursuit of happiness. And people will use that word in various ways. So I'm going to tell you a distinct way that I use it, that I believe comes from the Dharma. But it's not going to apply to every use of the word. But when we talk about being happy, I think we mostly talk about getting experiences that we want or that we prefer. And joy instead points to that type of happiness, if you want to call it that opens to what's simply here. It's less about getting and achieving, and it's more about receiving and opening to just what's here, just what's given. It's not easy to be without preferences, we humans manufacture them just all over the place, what we like and we don't like. And even when I invite you to enjoy your meditation, I kind of point you to experiences as simple as they are that you're likely to not have anything against, like the warmth of your hands together, or the touch of your lips, or the touch of your feet on the ground. Those seem like experiences that might be easy to enjoy in the moment. It might be harder to accept something that is unpleasant. So yes, we have preferences, but it's possible to, if we can call our attention to them, to let them go, at least temporarily, at least while we're conscious. And in doing so, allow our hearts to become simple. Allow our hearts to become settled. In a way they're often not when we're very much in the consciousness of preferences. I think happiness engages our ego, the idea of happiness. Egos like to think, egos like to be effective, And an effective ego is one that gets you what you want. And so we take some pride in that. The problem is that there's a shadow to that, which is often shame when we aren't actually able to get what we want. We aren't actually able to manipulate the causes and conditions around us to have things turn out the way we would prefer. There's often some sense of frustration and shame because you may feel like you're not adequate in some way for not being able to do that. And anxiety. People can feel anxious about happiness, It takes a lot to make things work out. And I'm not saying that as human beings you should give up trying to make anything work out. It's kind of part of the game, really. But it's possible to play this game and, how can I say, at the same time, be light about it. Not see that, not take it quite so personally. Not have quite so much riding on your skillfulness in having everything turn out the way you might wish it to. So joy is often found in this lack of anxiety, this sort of subsiding of those parts of the mind that are dedicated to making it all work out, keeping us safe, that have their vigilance going on a variety of different levels. So joy emerges when we let that subside. And enjoyment is just a little bit different than joy. Enjoyment, like the word says, it's sort of like you put joy into something, enjoy it. There's a bit of arousing a state here, a little bit, just a smidgen, of realizing you might have the choice to bask and take in the goodness of what's right in front of you. So there's a little bit of an intention, a little bit of a choice, a little bit of a rising to the occasion, a little bit of application of effort and energy. Again, I'm using the word little bit a lot because it doesn't take a lot. Enjoyment doesn't work if you're too heavy-handed. How much energy does it take for you to enjoy the warmth of your hands together? Not a lot, but you do have to have that intention. There's just kind of an intention that meets that experience. If you're feeling your hands right now, there's a distinct sensation. You may notice the warmth. What does it take to enjoy that? What's the added quality that is enjoyment? It's a little hard to put your finger on it. It is a kind of pleasant experience. Enjoyment doesn't have to be about pleasant experience, but it makes it a whole lot easier to turn toward a pleasant experience and really meet it and take it in. Enjoyment is that kind of quality of taking it in. So if we're drinking from the well of being, implied in that title is that we have to drink. There's this well of being all around us. We are in an ocean of being. And yet, we need to take a drink of it for it to really do its thing. That added bit of intentionality, that added bit of attention to turn toward it and actually be present in a fuller way. So feeling the hands. In order to enjoy the hands together, you bring a little more energy of presence, right? You meet it in a fuller way. You don't take it for granted. Whatever taking for granted is, it's not really fully meeting something. But if you fully meet this really simple experience of the hands together, there can be enjoyment. When you really meet the breath, there can be enjoyment. How often do we meditate and we don't really meet the breath? We're breathing, and maybe we're being mindful of the breath. But when I say enjoy the breath, it's like your heart takes a sip. Your heart takes a sip of being from that experience. One can be kind of coolly mindful of things. This is more like being warmly mindful. Actually taking it in. The homework is great for this. You're taking a sip of water. Really meet that experience. Enjoy it. And maybe the water's a little metallic or something. It's not the best water. It's so easy for our habit to kind of go, ew, I feel aversion. But it's actually possible to just meet the experience of sipping some metallic water and meet its unpleasantness. And it might sound a little weird to enjoy its unpleasantness, but in that kind of energy, it's actually possible. I learned this once on a retreat. I've told this story a number of times in this class, so bear with me. I'm not so old that I don't remember what I've told in this class. But I do repeat myself because there have been these moments that have been so illuminating, and I keep coming back to them. So this was a retreat I was doing in the Pacific Northwest at a retreat center called Cloud Mountain. And it was called that because it was near the Pacific Ocean, and a lot of very cold breezes that would come through. I found it rather damp and chilling at times. But that's not what this story is about. They also had composting toilets. So they, would have them around the area. And so when you got out of the Dharma hall to do your walking meditation, it's possible that you could be down with wind of one of these toilets. And so I imagine most people just avoided that. They'd go somewhere where that's not going to happen because people don't like it. It's not our preference. And I actually think that smell, there's something about that smell that's probably hardwired in human beings to not be a pleasant smell. You can't turn it into a pleasant smell because your very biology wants you to know there's something to avoid there. So, I would have said there's no way to enjoy that smell. But then there was one meditation where I just rose from my meditation and I was feeling really a lot of joy. And started doing the walking meditation, and it felt really joyful to walk, feel the earth under me. And I decided, let me do the path that goes by the composting toilet just to check it out. And so I walked, in this kind of slow, mindful way towards the composting toilet. And because I was in a state of joy, I wasn't really anticipating it. I just set the direction, and then I was just breathing and walking. And suddenly I passed through like the downwind, and I felt the composting toilet. And I felt it kind of stings in your nose and the back of your mouth. It's not, and that's unpleasant. But there was something that happened where my heart was joyful that composting toilets smell like composting toilets. It was just their sheer being, that they are what they are, that gave me joy. This is the simplest and most profound relationship to life, is to meet things with an open heart and let them be what they are, even if they're not pleasant. That joy can arise even in an unpleasant experience. There was something about that, it just untied a knot in me, and it untied a belief that unpleasant experiences are just intrinsically impossible to enjoy. You must feel aversion to them, you know? There's just this assumption. You have to go yuck and turn away. But in a moment where my heart was open, I didn't say yuck and turn away. I actually let in just that they are what they are. This is what they're supposed to smell like. This is what they in fact do smell like. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. So I continued to walk, and I just did my back and forth there, and I kept meeting the experience and reminding myself of what I had just realized. And so this is perhaps a more extraordinary example. Most of us don't live in that sort of state of joy. And so we don't meet things that are difficult with that state of joy. I was already in it, in the terms of going towards the composting toilet. So I had the advantage, but it revealed, the possibility. There are some really unpleasant things about life, pain being one of them. Physically unpleasant things can be really difficult. And yet I've also found that when the heart is open, even something that hurts physically can be met with at least love. Maybe not joy, but at least something like love. So in the invitation to enjoy, and doing it in little ways, you're practicing something quite profound. You're practicing the heart being able to open to what is. The heart being able to open to what is. It's good to practice that on things that are simple, things that are easy, and work up from there. Maybe in a given meditation, depending on your body, there may be some aspects of it that are not so easy to be with. That kind of kink in your neck, that kind of, soreness in the shoulders, the stuffed up nose, the twinges that come now and again just in a body all the time, the itches, all of these things. They're just little opportunities to turn toward whatever is without closing down to it. And maybe the word enjoyment is a little too ambitious, but turning towards things without closing down to them, turning towards things and fully being able to meet them. I don't think it's too ambitious. I think it's absolutely necessary if you want wisdom for living. You should be able to turn towards things that are unpleasant. And sometimes those things are psychological. Sometimes it's like someone saying something critical about you. And there's this tendency we all have to kind of shrink from that. Maybe even kind of grumble and blame them, criticize them back. So there's all this sort of reactivity that ensues, and then your mind can't quite let go of it. You go on, and your mind is rehearsing a snappy answer, or it's reassuring you you're okay, or whatever it is, but it's struggling with something. It's struggling. So even in that moment, what would it be to actually meet that experience without not necessarily meeting the being criticized? I actually think it would be really powerful to meet the aftershocks in your system. The aftershocks of someone saying something critical about you. Without feeling like you've got to be better than them or solve them. Just to kind of see the sensitivity of your system, just to see what it is to be a human being and have that kind of snag can you open your heart to that without demanding that you have the skill to never be hooked by someone's critical comment? I mean, that would be a very source of pride, wouldn't it? But often what I think is the case when it comes to presence is just meeting things as they are. And so when your heart is in kind of a fugue from the thought that you might have done something wrong or done something to not please someone or done something thoughtless, done something downright dangerous or foolish, when your heart is in a kind of fugue from that, what if you turn toward it? The ego doesn't like to do that because the ego thinks it's its job to maintain this positive thing, positive view of yourself. Presence actually doesn't have that agenda, thank God. Presence just sees things as they are. And so what it's often seeing is suffering. It's often seeing that we suffer. So in that moment when you're in a kind of a fugue from this thing you said that you realize kind of embarrassed you, or someone said something about you, when you're in this kind of recoiling, can you just kind of sidle up next to yourself and remain open as you watch other parts of you struggle? Yeah. Just remain open. It has this kind of, honey quality to it, Oh, sweetie, this is suffering. It's hard to hear something bad about yourself. It's hard to be criticized. And often it's not somebody else who's doing it. It's often just ourselves. Just ourselves. Some voice inside. Again, I'm not sure you'd call that enjoyment exactly. But it does have that quality of, can you keep your heart open? Can you turn with your heart open towards something that's a bit challenging? Again, start with what's easy. An itch when you're meditating. Maybe not that chronic pain. But, if you're in chronic pain, you're kind of stuck with it anyway, right? You can't escape it. You might as well turn toward it. And turn towards the being you are who has to live with the chronic pain. Even doesn't want it. It's funny how meditation, you don't have to banish any experience. Even the not liking, even the not wanting, you can turn toward it. Your presence is greater than it. Your presence is greater than the not wanting, the not liking, the recoiling. As you begin to discover that, there's a great deal of freedom there. And warmth toward yourself. And a greater and greater ability to enjoy being a human being. Because, there's just a certain amount of suffering in being a human being. And if we don't curse it, if we don't think there's something personal, we're taking personal about it, or if we don't think that it's our job to avoid all of it and give ourselves good marks if we do and give ourselves bad marks if we don't, if we actually begin to open to it, life becomes much more enjoyable. Life becomes lighter. I think when I started meditating, I had this weird belief that it was going to turn me into a perfect person. Whatever that is. Perfect people are probably insufferable. Yeah, no, it really snared my ego. And I thought it was going to improve me in all these ways, yada, yada, yada. And I realized, gradually, that isn't the case, at least in the way that I thought it would. More and more, it allowed me to relax about who I was and about this process of living. And kind of as a consequence, things did get better. And I think I did get better. I'm probably easier to be around. I probably enjoy life more. So those are maybe the things that you want when you're trying to be perfect. But the ironic thing is you can't reach them from that stance. You just can't. So take the time in your life to enjoy. And in those cases where it's unpleasant and the word enjoy doesn't maybe quite apply, just see if it's possible to turn towards things with your heart open. Turn towards things as they are. Meet things as they are with your heart open. And in any moment, it's this is again the paradox, is that there will be times when your heart isn't open. Lots of times when your heart isn't open. And you can't pry it open. But even in the moment where you just turn toward the experience of not having your heart open without any agenda, you're actually doing it. You're actually opening your heart. So it's possible to open your heart to a heart that feels closed, to a kind of hardness inside. It's entirely possible. Every moment is possible. All right.